mocked and rejected, the Omega never knew she was the Alpha King's fated mate. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's dive into today's tale. Elara Nightshade had always known she was different. Born into a world where power, strength, and dominance were revered above all else, Elara, an Omega, was considered a disappointment. Her wolf had never fully shifted, and in a society that valued the ability to transform, her inability was seen as a flaw. Her family had long since abandoned her, and she was left to navigate a cruel world alone. At the grand mate selection ceremony, Elara stood at the back, hidden from view, knowing full well that she would never be chosen. The other Omegas were stronger, more vibrant, more worthy, but not her. As the high-ranking alphas circled the room, eyeing the women who stood proudly before them, Elara lowered her gaze. She wasn't even allowed to look them in the eye, much less be considered a mate. Her heart sank as another Omega, full of hope, was chosen by an alpha who towered over her. Elara's breath hitched, but she quickly masked it with a bitter smile. She wasn't surprised. She never would be. The laughter around her stung as cruel whispers filled the air. Rejected again, someone muttered. She'll never find a mate. Just a useless Omega. The words cut deeper than any physical wound. Elara's chest tightened as she tried to shrink further into herself. The humiliation was almost unbearable, but it was all she had ever known. She could feel the weight of everyone's gaze, the judgment in their eyes. They all saw her as weak, broken. Her shoulders slumped, and she fought to hold back the tears that threatened to spill. But then, the atmosphere shifted. A silence fell over the room, and the air grew heavier. Elara dared to look up. A tall figure stood at the entrance, dark and commanding. The Alpha King himself, Aldric Stormrider. His reputation preceded him, a ruler. Feared by all, known for his ruthless ways and unyielding strength. He moved through the crowd like a predator stalking its prey, his presence dominating the room. Elara's heart skipped a beat as his icy blue eyes swept over the gathering. His gaze landed on her. For a moment, everything else disappeared. The whispers, the laughter, the judgment. It all faded into the background. Aldric's eyes were locked on hers, and in that moment, Elara knew something had changed. But she didn't understand what. His expression remained unreadable, but there was something in his eyes. A flicker of recognition of something deeper. Elara's breath caught in her throat as she dared not move. Not sure if this was real or just her mind playing tricks on her. But then Aldric did something that would change everything. He took a step forward, and the room fell completely silent. The murmurs stopped. The crowd parted. And in a voice that commanded the attention of everyone present, he spoke, his tone cold but firm. Touch her again and you will bleed. Elara's heart raced as the words echoed through the hall. The crowd remained motionless, shocked by the Alpha King's sudden declaration. The other alphas who had been laughing and jeering moments ago, now stood frozen in place, unsure of what to do. Aldric's gaze never left Elara as he walked toward her, his steps purposeful and determined. Elara could hardly believe what was happening. For the first time in her life, someone was standing up for her. Someone was protecting her. And it was none other than the Alpha King himself. The very man everyone feared. He stopped in front of her, towering over her small frame. Elara looked up, her eyes wide with disbelief. She wanted to speak, to ask why, but the words wouldn't come. Aldric leaned down, his breath cold against her cheek as he whispered, "You're mine." Elara's heart pounded in her chest. The overwhelming presence of Aldric Stormrider, the Alpha King, standing before her. His voice echoed in her ears as he whispered, "You're mine." The words were soft but carried a weight that made her knees feel like they might buckle beneath her. She had never been the center of anyone's attention in such a way. Her life had been one of rejection, isolation, and neglect. But now, in the middle of this crowded hall, the most feared alpha in the kingdom had claimed her. Elara couldn't move, couldn't speak. She just stared up at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. The room around them was eerily silent. The laughter, the mocking whispers, everything had stopped. All eyes were on them. On her. "Wi," she whispered, her voice trembling. Aldric didn't immediately answer. His gaze lingered on her for a moment longer before he straightened up, towering over her. The others in the room, still in shock from his declaration, watched in stunned silence. "Because you are mine," he repeated, his tone firm. But there was something softer beneath the command. Elara's mind raced. She had never expected this. She had always thought she would remain invisible, forgotten. Yet here she was, standing before the Alpha King, who had not only noticed her but had made an undeniable claim. She tried to gather her thoughts, but the weight of the moment kept her frozen in place. She opened her mouth to speak again, but Aldric held up a hand, silencing her. "Come with me," he said, his voice still carrying the same authority, but there was something different about it now. It wasn't a demand, it was an invitation. Without waiting for her response, he turned and began walking toward the door. Elara hesitated for a moment, her feet unwilling to move. This was all so overwhelming. But when she saw the other alphas and omegas still staring at her, whispering amongst themselves, something in her snapped. She wasn't weak. She wasn't a failure. She had fought too hard to get this far. Gathering her courage, Elara followed Aldric. As she walked behind him, she could feel the eyes of the entire room on her. But this time it wasn't the cruel, judgmental stares she was used to. No, this time it was different. There was something in their gazes, something she couldn't quite place. Was it envy, fear, or respect? Elara didn't know, but it made her skin tingle. Aldric led her through the grand hall, his stride confident, and his every step a testament to his authority. She followed him through the towering marble doors, into the grand corridors of the palace. The walls were adorned with golden tapestries depicting ancient battles and the history of his lineage. It felt as though she were walking through a dream, a place so far removed from the life she had known. The air was thick with the scent of luxury, of power, of something ancient and untouchable. When they reached a large chamber, Aldric turned to face her. The room was dimly lit, but the shadows only served to highlight his commanding presence. His blue eyes, so cold, so piercing, locked with hers. "You are not like the others," he said, his voice quieter now, though still holding that deep authority. "You are stronger than you think." Elara swallowed, unsure of what to say. She had never been told anything like this. Her entire life she had been told she was weak, that she was nothing. But here, in the presence of the Alpha King, those words had no place. "I don't understand," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why me?" Aldric's gaze softened for a moment, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. "Because you are my fated mate," he said, each word weighted with the power of destiny. "And I do not take that lightly." Elara felt a chill run down her spine. The words were almost too much to process. Her fated mate? She had never believed in such things. But now, standing before him, she couldn't deny the connection, the undeniable pull she felt toward him. It was as though her soul recognized him before her mind did. "But I'm not like the others," she said, her voice shaking. "I can't shift. I'm not strong enough." Aldric stepped closer to her, his presence overwhelming. "Strength is not always about power or transformation," he said softly. "True strength is in the heart, in the will to fight, to survive. And you, Elara, have that in abundance." She looked up at him, her heart pounding. She didn't know what to say, what to feel. She had spent so long believing she was nothing, and now here she was in the Alpha King's presence, being told she was something more. Something that mattered. "But why claim me in front of everyone?" Elara asked, still struggling to understand. Aldric's eyes narrowed, as if weighing his words carefully. "Because you deserve to be seen," he said, his voice low and steady. "For too long you've been ignored, cast aside. But not anymore. Not while I am here." Elara felt a tear slip down her cheek, but it wasn't one of sadness. It was one of relief. For the first time in her life she felt like she belonged, like she was finally seen. Aldric's gaze softened as he reached out, brushing away the tear with his thumb. "You are mine," he repeated, his voice filled with an intensity that made Elara's heart race. "And no one will ever make you feel lesser again." Elara stood frozen in the dimly lit room, Aldric's words echoing in her mind like a thunderclap. You are mine. The weight of those words pressed down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. She had never imagined this moment, never thought that someone, especially someone as powerful as the Alpha King, would claim her. For so long she had felt invisible, rejected, a mere shadow in a world that valued strength and power above all else. But here she was standing before the Alpha King, the most feared and respected ruler in the land. He was right, she was not like the others, but was that a good thing? She had never felt strong, never believed in fate or destiny. But now Aldric's presence was undeniable. His cold blue eyes softened for a brief moment, and his large hand reached out to gently touch her cheek. You are not weak, Elara. You have always been stronger than you know, he said, his voice low and soothing, as if trying to calm a storm inside her. She didn't know how to respond. She felt like a stranger to herself. Her whole life she had been told she was broken, a mistake. And now this man, this powerful Alpha King, was telling her that she was strong, that she mattered. But I don't understand, she whispered, her voice trembling. Why would you want me? I'm nothing like the others. Aldric stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. Because you are mine, Elara. I don't choose my mate out of convenience or power. I choose them because fate says so. And fate has chosen you. Elara's breath caught in her throat. Fate? She had never believed in such things. Her life had been nothing but a series of cruel twists, one disappointment after another. But as she stood here in Aldric's presence, she couldn't help but feel a strange sense of connection to him. A pull that was both comforting and terrifying. I am not the woman you think I am, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I cannot shift, I cannot protect myself like the other Omegas. I am weak. Aldric's gaze softened, and he cupped her face with both of his hands. No, Elara. You are not weak. You have a strength inside of you that is unlike anything I have ever seen. It is not the ability to shift that makes you strong. It is your heart, your will to survive, to keep going even when the world tells you to stop. Elara closed her eyes at his touch, his words sinking deep into her soul. She had never heard anyone speak to her like this. She had always been the one left behind, the one no one cared about. But here in this moment Aldric made her feel like she was worth something, like she had a purpose. She opened her eyes, meeting his gaze once more. But why now? Why did you claim me in front of everyone? She asked, her voice still shaky with uncertainty. Aldric's expression grew serious. Because you deserve to be seen, Elara. You have been invisible for too long, and I will not allow that to continue. You are not just an Omega. You are my fated mate. And I will protect you from anyone who dares to hurt you. Elara felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. She had never been good at showing vulnerability, but in Aldric's presence, it felt safe to let her guard down. But how can I be your mate? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm nothing compared to you. I'm not strong enough to stand beside you. Aldric's lips curled into a small reassuring smile. You are everything I need, Elara. You are my equal even if you cannot see it yet. Together we will face whatever comes our way. Elara took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. Could it be true? Could she truly be his equal? She had always thought of herself as nothing, as someone who was only worth something when she was useful to others. But Aldric made her believe in something more. He made her believe in herself. What happens now? She asked, her voice barely audible. Now, Aldric said, his tone steady and firm. We begin a new chapter, Elara. Together we will face the challenges ahead. And we will rewrite your story. You are no longer just the Omega who was cast aside. You are the Luna of this pack, and no one will ever make you feel lesser again. Elara felt a surge of emotion rise within her. Hope, fear, uncertainty, and something else she couldn't quite place. For the first time in her life, she felt like she had a place, like she mattered. And it was all because of Aldric, the Alpha King who had claimed her as his own. I will not fail you, she whispered, her voice strong despite the doubt still lingering in her chest. Aldric's gaze softened, and he stepped closer, placing a hand over her heart. You will never fail me, Elara. Together, we will face whatever the future holds. Elara stood by the large window, staring out at the vast kingdom of Sylverine that stretched before her. The moonlight bathed the land in a silver glow, and for the first time, she felt a sense of belonging. Aldric's words, "You are mine," still echoed in her mind, but they no longer caused her fear. Instead, they filled her with an unfamiliar warmth, a sense of hope she had never known. The last few days had been a whirlwind. Since Aldric's public declaration, everything in her life had changed. She had been welcomed into his palace, the grandest place she had ever seen, a stark contrast to the lonely, dimly lit room she had once called home. The walls were adorned with tapestries of Sylverine's history, with images of powerful kings and queens, their legacy carved into every stone. She had never imagined living in a place like this, surrounded by luxury, power, and security. But most of all, she never imagined being by Aldric's side. He had kept his word, treating her with respect and care, but she could feel the weight of expectations bearing down on her. As the Luna of the pack, she had a role to play. Elara didn't know what that role was yet, but she knew it was important. She had never thought of herself as a leader, but now with Aldric by her side, she was beginning to see a different version of herself. A knock on the door broke her from her thoughts. She turned to see Aldric standing in the doorway, his strong frame filling the space. His presence was commanding, but there was a softness in his eyes when he looked at her. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice deep and steady. Elara nodded, though her heart fluttered nervously in her chest. She had spent so many years being ignored, dismissed, that the idea of stepping into a position of power felt overwhelming. But Aldric's words gave her strength. "You are not weak," he had said to her, over and over again, whenever she doubted herself. "You are mine, and you will stand by me, not behind me." She knew he believed in her, but could she believe in herself? The weight of the responsibility ahead of her felt heavy, but she had to try. She couldn't let Aldric down. She walked toward him, her steps more confident than she felt. As she reached him, he smiled, his expression softening. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice full of warmth. Elara smiled shyly, the compliment making her feel self-conscious. "Thank you," she replied quietly. He took her hand in his, leading her out of the room. "The council is waiting for us," he said, his voice taking on a more formal tone. "They will want to discuss the future of Sylverine, and your place in it." Elara nodded, her heart racing. She had known this moment would come, the moment when she would have to face the people who had once rejected her, the ones who had never thought she was worthy of being more than a mere Omega. But now she was different. She wasn't the same girl who had been laughed at and cast aside. She was the Luna, the Alpha King's mate, and she would stand by his side. The walk to the council room felt long, the weight of her thoughts pressing down on her. When they arrived, Aldric opened the door, and Elara stepped into the room, her heart pounding. The council members, a group of powerful alphas and betas, turned their eyes on her as she entered. The room fell silent, and Elara could feel their gaze on her, heavy and assessing. She held her head high, refusing to shrink away from their scrutiny. She was no longer the meek, invisible Omega. She was the Luna, and she would prove her worth. Aldric's presence beside her gave her strength, but she knew this was her moment to stand on her own. The council members murmured among themselves, but Aldric's voice cut through the noise. "This is Elara, my mate," he said firmly, his tone commanding. "She will stand with me as we lead Sylverine into the future." The room fell silent again, but this time there was a different energy. The tension was thick, but there was also something else, respect, recognition. They weren't laughing at her now. They weren't dismissing her. They were watching her, waiting to see what she would do. Elara took a deep breath, gathering her courage. She turned to face the council members, her gaze steady. "I may not have the strength of an alpha," she said, her voice calm but firm, "but I have something else. I have the heart to lead, to fight for this kingdom, and for its people. I am not here to take Aldric's place. I am here to stand by his side, and together, we will build a better future for Sylverine." There was a long pause, but then one of the council members, an older alpha with a stern expression, stood. "You are bold, Elara," he said, his voice measured. "But boldness is what this kingdom needs. If Aldric believes in you, then so will we." Another council member, a younger beta with dark hair, nodded in agreement. "The pack respects strength," he said, "but we also respect loyalty. If you stand with Aldric, we stand with you. Elara's heart soared. The council, the very people who had once looked down on her, were now acknowledging her. They were accepting her, and with that acceptance, she felt the weight on her shoulders begin to lift. She wasn't just Aldric's mate. She was Elara Nightshade, the Luna of Sylverine, and she had a place in this world. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in her life, Elara felt ready to face it. She turned to Aldric, who stood beside her, his expression proud. Together they would face whatever came next, and together, they would make Sylverine stronger. And Elara would prove that she was not just a rejected Omega. She was a force to be reckoned with. Elara sat in the grand hall, the weight of the council's approval still lingering in her mind. It had been a week since Aldric had introduced her to the pack, and since then, things had changed in ways she could not have imagined. The once cold, judgmental looks from the other members of the pack had been replaced with something else. Curiosity, respect, and in some cases even admiration. She had made her place among them, but it had not been easy. The role of Luna was not one she had ever expected to take on, and every day, she felt the pressure growing. But she was no longer the timid Omega who had been cast aside. She was Aldric's mate, and she would prove herself worthy of the title. As she sat by the fire, lost in thought, Aldric entered the room, his footsteps firm and steady. His presence filled the space, commanding attention, but there was a gentleness in his eyes when he looked at her. "You've done well," he said, his voice warm. "The council respects you and the pack is starting to follow your lead." Elara smiled at his words, though a part of her still felt uncertain. "I'm not sure I'm ready for all of this," she admitted, her voice soft. "I've never been a leader. I don't know if I can live up to their expectations." Aldric moved closer to her, his large hand resting gently on her shoulder. "You're more ready than you think, Elara. You've always had the strength within you. You just needed to see it yourself." His words were a comfort, but Elara couldn't shake the fear that still lingered deep within her. What if she failed? What if she wasn't strong enough to lead alongside him? Aldric seemed to sense her doubt, and he knelt before her, lifting her chin gently with his fingers. "Look at me," he said, his voice low but filled with conviction. "You are my mate, Elara. That means you are capable of anything. Together we are unstoppable. The pack sees that now, and they will follow you as they follow me. You are not alone in this." Elara's heart fluttered at his words. She had spent so many years feeling invisible, discarded by those she had trusted. But now here was Aldric standing by her side, believing in her when no one else ever had. She took a deep breath and nodded. "I will do my best," she said, her voice filled with newfound resolve. "I won't let you down." Aldric's smile was filled with pride as he stood and extended his hand to her. "I know you won't. Now we have a future to build. Together." The days that followed were a blur of meetings, training, and planning. Elara's role as Luna became more defined with each passing day, and she found herself growing more confident in her abilities. She worked alongside Aldric, learning the intricacies of pack leadership, and she saw firsthand how hard he fought for his people. It was not just about power or dominance for him. It was about protecting the pack and ensuring that they all had a future. And slowly, Elara began to realize that the future he wanted to build was one she could help create. One evening, as the sun began to set over the kingdom, Aldric took Elara outside to the balcony overlooking the land. The view was breathtaking, the vast expanse of Sylverine stretching out before them, the land that they would rule together. "Do you see it?" Aldric asked, his voice soft. "This is the kingdom we will build. Not just with power, but with compassion, with understanding, and with the strength that we both possess." Elara looked out over the land, the weight of their shared future settling in her heart. She had never imagined herself in a position of power, but now, standing beside Aldric, she could see it. She could see how they could make this kingdom better, how they could lead with kindness and strength, not just dominance. "I see it," she whispered, a sense of peace washing over her. "And I'm ready." Aldric turned to her, his eyes filled with pride and love. "You always have been." And in that moment, Elara knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. She was no longer the Omega who had been rejected. She was the Luna, the Alpha King's mate, and she was ready to lead Sylverine into a new era of strength, unity, and love. The future was theirs to shape, and Elara was ready to do her part. As days passed, Elara found herself growing more into her role as Luna. Though the challenges she faced were far from easy, the weight of her responsibilities continued to press on her shoulders, but with Aldric by her side, she felt a sense of strength she had never known before. It wasn't just the title of Luna that had changed her, but the confidence Aldric had instilled in her. Each meeting, each decision they made together, brought her closer to realizing that she was no longer the timid Omega, who had once been overlooked by everyone around her. She was part of something bigger now. A kingdom. A future. And she was ready to fight for it. One evening, as the two of them stood overlooking the training grounds from the balcony, Elara couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. The pack had grown stronger, more united, under Aldric's leadership, and with her now by his side, she saw the positive changes taking root. She had been a quiet observer at first, unsure of where she fit into the pack's dynamics, but now she stood with purpose. Aldric had brought her into every aspect of their work together, from the smallest tasks to the most important decisions. And the more she learned, the more she understood how much influence she could have in shaping Sylverine's future. "Look at them," Aldric said, his voice low and filled with pride. "They trust you now. You've proven yourself, Elara." Elara smiled at him, but there was still a lingering doubt in her heart. "I don't know if I've proven myself yet," she admitted, her voice softer than she intended. "There's still so much to do, and I fear that I'll never live up to their expectations." Aldric turned to face her, his piercing blue eyes locking with hers. "Elara, you're already more than I could have ever asked for in a mate. You've shown courage, wisdom, and strength, qualities that no one could ever doubt. You are the future of this kingdom, and no one knows that better than I do." His words filled her with warmth, but there was still a part of her that felt like an imposter. She wasn't like the other leaders she had seen in the pack, those with years of training and battle experience. She was new to all of this, new to leading, new to being a part of something that mattered. But Aldric's belief in her kept her going. That night, as they walked together through the quiet halls of the palace, Elara couldn't help but feel a sense of peace settle in her heart. She had been so afraid of what the future held, unsure of her place in this vast world. But now she knew that she had a role to play. Purpose. Aldric stopped in front of the large wooden doors that led to their chambers. He turned to her with a soft smile. "You've come a long way, Elara. But remember, you are never alone in this. I am here always, and together we will face whatever challenges come our way." Elara's heart swelled at his words, and for the first time in a long while she felt truly at peace. She was no longer the Omega who had been cast aside. She was Elara Nightshade, the Luna of Sylverine, and she had found her place in this world. They entered their chambers and Elara let out a long breath, feeling the weight of the day lift off her shoulders. As she gazed out of the window at the moonlit sky, a sense of determination filled her. She was ready for whatever lay ahead. She wasn't just Aldric's mate anymore. She was his equal. And together, they would lead Sylverine into a new era. The days to come would be filled with challenges, yes, but Elara was no longer afraid. She had Aldric by her side, and she had the strength to fight for what she believed in. She knew the future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. She would face it with Aldric as his partner, as his Luna, and as the woman who had finally found her place in the world. Days turned into weeks, and Elara's confidence continued to grow with each passing moment. The pack was starting to see her as more than just the Alpha King's mate. They were beginning to understand that she had a place beside him, as his equal, his Luna. It wasn't always easy, and there were moments of doubt, but with Aldric's unwavering support, she began to see herself in a way she never had before. One morning, after a particularly difficult council meeting where tensions were high between the rival factions within the pack, Aldric led her to their private garden. The quiet beauty of the flowers and the peaceful sound of water trickling in the fountain offered a stark contrast to the heated discussions they had just left behind. "You handled yourself well in there," Aldric said, his voice calm as he took her hand and led her toward a bench under a large oak tree. Elara looked up at him, the weight of the meeting still heavy in her chest. "It was hard," she admitted, her voice soft. "I could feel the distrust, the judgment. Some of them still don't believe I'm capable of leading." Aldric stopped and turned to face her, his eyes serious. "You are capable, Elara. You've already proven that. These challenges are only the beginning. You're not just standing by my side. You're standing for Sylverine, for the future of this pack. It's not easy, but you are ready for this. Elara looked into his eyes, seeing the absolute trust he had in her. The words he spoke filled her with a sense of purpose she hadn't realized she was capable of. I won't let you down, she said, her voice steady. Aldric smiled and kissed the top of her head, the gesture filled with affection. I know you won't. The next few weeks were filled with more decisions, more council meetings, and more struggles as they worked to unite the pack. But with each hurdle, Elara became more confident, more certain that she could lead. She worked closely with Aldric, learning how to balance compassion with strength, kindness with authority. The pack was slowly changing, the members beginning to understand that leadership was not about power, but about the willingness to fight for the people you cared for. But not everyone was pleased with the changes. As their influence grew, so did the tension. One evening, just after sunset, Elara and Aldric were returning from a strategic meeting when they were confronted by a group of high-ranking alphas who had remained loyal to the old ways of ruling with fear. What is this nonsense, Aldric? One of them, a large alpha with a scar across his face, sneered. You think that this Omega, this woman, can lead us? She is nothing but a weakling. Elara stood beside Aldric, her heart pounding, but she refused to let the words break her. She had faced worse in her life, and she would not let this man's words define her now. Aldric stepped forward, his posture imposing as he glared down at the alpha. She is my Luna, and she is the future of this pack, Aldric said, his voice cold and commanding. If you have a problem with that, then you can take it up with me. The room fell silent. The other alphas looked between Aldric and the one who had spoken, but no one dared to challenge the Alpha King. The scarred alpha grunted, clearly frustrated. But he didn't move, didn't say anything more. Finally, he turned and walked away, muttering curses under his breath. Aldric turned to Elara, his expression softening. Are you all right? He asked, his voice full of concern. Elara nodded, though her hand still trembled slightly. I'm fine, she said, though she knew it would take time to truly shake the lingering doubt. She wasn't used to confrontation, especially not in this new life where everything felt so fragile. But Aldric's words echoed in her mind. You are my Luna, and you are the future of this pack. That was enough to give her the strength to face whatever came next. I'm not just your mate, Aldric, she said quietly, lifting her chin. I'm your equal, and I will fight for this pack, for our future. Aldric smiled, pride shining in his eyes. I know you will, he said softly, his voice filled with affection. And together we will face anything. Elara smiled back, her heart swelling with emotion. They had come so far, and she knew the journey was just beginning. The future of Sylverine was uncertain, but with Aldric by her side, she was ready for whatever came next. She was no longer the invisible Omega. She was Elara Nightshade, the Luna of Sylverine, and she would lead this pack with all the strength she had inside her. The challenges ahead would test them, but Elara knew one thing for sure. Together, they would face them and emerge stronger than ever. Weeks passed since the confrontation with the rebellious alphas, and Elara had grown more comfortable in her role as Luna. The pack had begun to accept her, some more reluctantly than others, but there was no denying the shift in the air. Aldric's confidence in her never wavered, and as the days wore on, Elara found herself standing taller, speaking with authority, and making decisions that had a lasting impact on the pack. The challenges that arose from the internal tensions of the pack were not easy to handle, but Elara was no longer afraid to face them. She had the strength of Aldric by her side, and together, they had started to heal the wounds that had festered in Sylverine for far too long. One day, as the sun began to set, Elara found herself walking through the forest, the cool breeze brushing against her face. She often found peace here, away from the responsibilities that awaited her in the palace. It was in these moments of solitude that she could hear her own thoughts clearly, without the noise of the world around her. The sound of footsteps broke the silence, and Elara turned to see Aldric approaching. His usual strong and confident presence filled the space around them, but today, there was something different in his eyes. Concern. He stopped in front of her, his gaze softening. You've been spending a lot of time out here, he said, his voice filled with gentle inquiry. Elara smiled softly, the cool evening air calming her restless thoughts. I just needed some time to think, she admitted, her voice quiet. There's so much pressure. The council, the pack, everything. Sometimes it feels like it's all on my shoulders. Aldric reached out and took her hand, pulling her closer to him. You are not alone in this, he said, his voice steady. I am right here with you, Elara. We are in this together. Elara looked up at him, her heart swelling with emotion. She had always feared being alone, but now, standing beside him, she realized she had never truly been alone. Aldric had always been there, supporting her, guiding her. I know, she said softly, squeezing his hand, but sometimes it feels like I'm not enough, like I'll fail. Aldric lifted her chin gently, his eyes locking with hers. You are more than enough, he said, his voice filled with unwavering conviction. I believe in you, Elara. You've already proven how strong you are. The pack sees it. I see it. His words filled her with warmth, but doubt still lingered in her heart. She had always struggled with self-worth, and despite Aldric's reassurances, there were moments when the fear of failure consumed her. What if I make the wrong decisions? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. What if I let the pack down? Aldric's expression softened, and he pulled her into an embrace, holding her close. Elara, he murmured, we all make mistakes. No one is perfect. But it's not about being perfect. It's about doing what's right, even when it's difficult. I will stand beside you no matter what. Together, we'll face whatever comes our way. Elara closed her eyes, allowing herself to lean into his warmth. His words were a comfort, but the weight of leadership still weighed heavily on her. She had come so far, but there was still so much to prove. The future of Sylverine depended on the choices they made, and she couldn't afford to falter. Thank you, she whispered, her voice full of gratitude. I don't know what I would do without you. Aldric kissed the top of her head gently. You don't have to do anything alone, Elara. I'm here. We're in this together always. As they stood in the peaceful silence of the forest, Elara knew that, no matter what challenges awaited them, they would face them as partners. She had found her place not just as Aldric's mate, but as Luna of Sylverine, and she would give everything to protect their future. She wasn't perfect, and she would make mistakes, but with Aldric by her side, she knew she could rise above anything. Together they would build a future for the pack, one where compassion and strength would guide them. The weight of her role no longer felt as heavy, because she knew she wasn't carrying it alone. She had Aldric and they had each other. The days had turned into months, and the changes in Sylverine were undeniable. The pack had united under Aldric's rule, and Elara's influence as Luna had grown stronger with each passing day. She had faced every challenge with the strength and grace that Aldric had always believed she possessed. No longer the timid Omega who had been cast aside, Elara had embraced her role with everything she had, proving to herself and the pack that she was more than capable of leading. But despite the progress they had made, there were still moments of doubt, moments when Elara wondered if she was truly living up to her potential. It was during one such moment, when the weight of her responsibilities felt overwhelming, that Aldric found her once again, standing in the quiet of their private garden. The moonlight bathed her in a soft glow, her figure outlined against the night sky. As Aldric approached, he could sense the tension in her. Elara, he said gently, his voice soothing, you've been distant lately. What's on your mind? Elara turned to him, her eyes reflecting the weight of her thoughts. I keep wondering if I'm enough, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The pack is depending on us. On me. What if I fail them? What if I'm not strong enough to be the leader they need? Aldric stepped forward, his presence a comfort as he placed a hand on her shoulder. You are enough, Elara. You've always been enough, he said, his voice filled with conviction. You've already proven to everyone, including yourself, that you are capable of leading. No one doubts you. Elara shook her head, the uncertainty still gnawing at her. But there are still so many challenges ahead. So many unknowns. What if I make the wrong decision? What if I let you down? Aldric's expression softened as he took both of her hands in his. Elara, you've already faced so much, and you've never given up. You've stood by my side through everything. You're not just my mate. You are my partner in every sense of the word. We will face these challenges together, just as we have from the beginning. Elara looked up at him, her heart filled with a mixture of love and gratitude. She had never thought she would be standing here, at the heart of Sylverine's future, alongside the Alpha King. She had never thought she would be the one to help lead this kingdom into a new era. I'm scared, she whispered. I'm scared of failing, of not being the leader I need to be. Aldric's gaze softened, and he gently cupped her face in his hands. Fear is natural, Elara, he said, his voice tender but strong. But it's not the fear that defines us. It's how we rise above it, how we move forward, even when we're uncertain. You are not alone in this. I am with you always. His words wrapped around her like a blanket, soothing the lingering doubts in her heart. Elara smiled, feeling a warmth fill her from the inside. Together, she whispered. Always. Aldric smiled back, his eyes filled with love and pride. Always. As they stood together, the weight of their journey ahead no longer felt so heavy. Elara knew that no matter what challenges they would face in the future, they would face them as a team. She was no longer the rejected Omega who had been cast aside. She was Elara Nightshade, Luna of Sylverine, and she had earned her place at Aldric's side. The future of the pack and of Sylverine was in their hands, and together they would lead it to greatness. With Aldric by her side, Elara was ready for whatever came next. The kingdom of Sylverine had endured trials, but it would rise stronger than ever, united by love, strength, and the unwavering bond between Luna and her Alpha King.